Last week, we practiced locking onto a target and having the discipline to only click when the target was centered on the screen. This week, we're all about the journey rather than the destination. The intent is to connect how we move our body to how we move in game. I once asked someone how he's able to pull off such stupid illegal flicks. He stated it was all very eye-reliant. It's like his brain takes a mental freeze frame of the scene to gauge the distance he needs to move his hand for the flick. Let's see a replay. It's an exercise in hand-eye coordination. His eye sees the target on the screen and immediately knows how far to move his hand to flick to the target. This is part of what makes a first-person shooter a sport, is that fundamental core of mechanics. Practicing mouse movement is learning how to move your body, like how someone has to learn to move their fingers to play guitar or move their legs to do a somersault. These fundamentals are all about drilling good form and technique during practice so that we don't have to manually think about them in game. Mechanics is a passive skill. It's something that good players don't even have to think about. Practicing to improve your mechanics, however, is an incredibly active and never-ending process. Anyways, AimLab is here to stay. This week we'll be making a playlist of Grid Shot Ultimate, Spider Shot Precision, and then Line Shot Ultimate. You can add whatever else in there you want, but at least have those three. Line Shot trains us to take the shortest, and thus most optimal, path to our target. By drilling this over and over again, your hand will get familiar with how far it needs to travel on the mouse mat to center your target. Your hand will also learn how it needs to move to draw a straight line. It's one of my favorite AimLab exercises for this reason. It's about drilling clean movements and good technique, especially for flicks. Line Shot can strain the wrists if you do it too much, so be sure to stretch your wrist and forearm after doing AimLab. Admittedly, last week's center stage exercise is pretty good practice for mouse movement. Spinning around looking for targets forces your hand to practice sweeping large angles. This week, think about keeping your mouse on the mouse mat as long as possible before lifting it up to readjust. Every time you have to lift your hand to readjust, your aim enters a dead zone. We want to minimize time in the dead zone during this practice. We can partly train that by keeping our mouse on the mat for as long as possible. Over time, your eyes will let you know how far your hand needs to travel to go from target to target. You don't need to change how you sit or how your mouse arm rests. All you have to do is try to use all the space you have available and make a mental note of how far your hand is traveling on your mat to span angles.
We can say goodbye to the Guardian, or we can keep him forever for standing reasons. This week's deathmatch might be a little sad in our scores, but the way we're going to train this is absolutely vital. First, Paquita will show the concept in a custom. When spanning areas of a map, in other words, when clearing off angles, you want your mouse movement to be steady and fixed. She's going to place her crosshair at the edge of this corner, and as she's moving into this area, she pivots around the corner. Her crosshair should be anchored by the corner at head height at all times. The corner and her crosshair are besties and she never wants to tear them apart. This allows you to enter an area in a much safer way. If an enemy surprises her by existing in an off angle, our crosshair should already be placed on or near their head when we first spot them. All we have to do then is click. It's just simply reacting by stopping your arm or wrist and then clicking. So we're going to pivot around the edges of the map in deathmatch. We're not here to admire the floor or walls, we're here to pivot. While we're pivoting, we want to reduce our aim dead zone. We need smooth, continuous action to avoid dead zone time. When an enemy appears, we stop moving and then we click. So, in deathmatch, we practice pivoting those corners.
And that's week 3. It's a lot to think about, I know. Again, training mechanics is an incredibly active process, but if you really focus during your drills and do them over and over again, you'll find yourself in-game naturally doing what you've been drilling. This is the entire point of focus practice. Training good mechanics until they become second nature. Our goals for the week are then to think about our mouse movement and how to train it. Our exercises are Line Shot Ultimate. Stay within the lines as much as possible. Think about what your hand, wrist, and arm are all doing together to draw a straight line. The center stage exercise. Think about keeping your mouse on the mouse mat for as long as possible before lifting it. And in deathmatch, pivot around corners between open areas looking for heads. And for the optional practices, you can delete your crosshair for the range exercise. Or, if you really want, we can go into a custom map and practice pivoting around corners. Ping me if you want to practice this together. I hide in off angles so that you can practice shooting me. Good luck and practice with intent.